Welcome, Joel, and everybody who's here and might come in and out throughout the rest of this time. This is the first of the Words of Wisdom speaker series here with Hope for Stuttering. So glad that you're the first one to start it off, and we get to hear not only a bit of your story of just how your relationship with your stuttering has evolved and changed over time. Really interested to hear about that, and also you can add in either throughout that time or towards the end when you finish some of your words of wisdom for those that might be listening in now and in the future. So, why don't you introduce yourself and take it from here?
Awesome. Um, uh, b- Before I get started here, remind me, is the session lasts until 7:15, and just about how much time do you want me to leave for the Q&A portion, just so I don't get
Yeah.
rambling?
We are starting a little late with our icebreakers and whatnot. So I still want you to have, it's fine. Like if we go over a bit and people have to drop off, that's okay because if we're the only two at the end, that's
Okay.
that's all right because we'll have it on video for people to watch also.
Okay.
So I would say let's stick with about 15 to 30 minutes range
Perfect.
for like this first part, and then the Q&A will open up at that point. So let's do that.
Sounds great. All right. Hello,
Okay.
everyone. My name is Joel Korte. I'm 39 years old. I live in Minnesota. Started stuttering when I was about 5 years old, um, and have gone through all sorts of different experiences with stuttering. My relationship with stuttering has changed a lot, which I'm going to get into. What I'm doing right now is I started a guitar effects pedal business. We just had our 10-year anniversary, so that's pretty exciting to be around that long. Um, I have 20 employees, which as I kind of go through my story and my relationship with my stuttering and this whole arc, there was certainly a time of my life where that would have seemed absolutely impossible. So I'm excited to talk about that. I also This is also my uh, 10-year wedding anniversary. So I've been married for 10 years, and I have three kids aged 8, 6, and 1. Um, I think that's about it for the basics. So I'll just kind of jump into it here. Um, so I kind of want to just give just a little bit of biographical information, as far as it relates to my journey with stuttering, and then spend a little bit of time talking about uh, what what my stuttering is like now, and what my relationship with my stuttering is now, and how I uh, manage or or don't manage it, um, as it in my current life. So yeah, I started when I was about 5 years old, and up until I was about 24 years old. So it was about 20 years of my stuttering career, as I like to call it sometimes. I really just deeply hated it. And I know that's the way it is, unfortunately, for a lot of us. When I was a kid, and I really thought that there was something wrong with me. I thought that I hoped that the stuttering would go away, or that I could learn how to not stutter. Um, and unfortunately, as we know, the easiest way to not stutter is just not to talk, or to avoid situations or words that you think you're going to stutter on. So um, uh, I feel like, for the most part, elementary school was all right. I had like my little community, and uh, my friends for the most part were pretty nice about it. I uh, I remember being very, very scared of you know reading in class, things like that. I got some therapy in school, but it was really, you know, focused on uh, fluency, which sort of reinforced all the, opinions that I had, that I just kind of needed to stop stuttering at all costs. Um, and then things started to get really challenging for me when when I went to middle school in seventh grade. That's when I think it really started to become a major problem for me, because I was so worried about what other kids uh, thought, and how I was perceived. And I was really worried about uh, teasing or bullying, things like that. Which of course is, as we've all um, come to realize, is very common for kids who stutter at that age to, to be worried about that stuff. And I started to see this private therapist and really got into practicing um, um, different strategies and tools and things like that. And for better or for worse, I started to get some success with that. And by success, I mean I was able to use the tools somewhat effectively. And but I was really, really attached to the fluency. And I remember in eighth grade in particular, I was actually able to read out loud in class, and I was volunteering to read it sometimes, and that was something that I just really, really avoided prior to that, and that just felt amazing. And I remember the therapist I was working with, it kind of didn't seem like I didn't um, need to have therapy anymore, and all of that just felt incredible. I remember thinking like, wow, this is behind me now. I I um I worked really hard, and I this is just not something that's going to be a problem for me in anymore. And I'll never forget this time I volunteered to read in ninth grade English class, and there was just this, I think it was like a sound, a B uh, sound. And you know how with stuttering, there's, the mix of like the core stuttering that we have, and then there's that like really challenging psychological component that can happen, where and then I started scanning ahead when I was reading, and anytime a B would come up, I would get really, really worried about it and get really stressed and really tense. And I started to get really big blocks, and everybody was really confused in class because I hadn't really been stuttering overtly prior to that. And that was really like it's kind of like the beginning of the end because I just really shut down after that. I was really scared about that situation ever happening to me again. I didn't really tell anyone about it because I felt like such a failure. I didn't want to go back to my speech therapist and get more help because I felt like I screwed up somehow. And I didn't know how normal that was that I experienced. So I just really allowed it to really put me in a bad spot. So throughout high school, it was just a lot of avoidance, covert stuttering, trying to do anything possible to make it appear like I was fluent. So if there was ever like an option, you know, any kind of presentation in class or something like that where I could make a video instead of uh, doing the speech, that was always what I went for. I would pretend to be sick on the days where I had to give a speech. It was a lot of anxiety, a lot of fear. And that pretty much continued on through uh, college. It's just avoid, avoid, hide, um, do everything possible to make it look like you're fluent. Um, and I saw stuttering as this terrible, shameful thing, embarrassing, and yeah, I mean, just uh, any sort of negative, and that I mean, in my defense, that was kind of all that was ever presented to me. So I didn't really know that there was any other way, to think about it. Um, and then as something terrible happened, I'll try to just, even though this was like all really like a big uh part of everything and why I ended up starting my own company and things like that. But in 2007, right before I was going to graduate from college, my brother was killed by a drunk driver, and he was a year and a half older than me. We were super close, just absolute best friends, and that just really turned everything upside down, um and I got a job after I graduated from college, and that was like just absolute rock bottom for me because there I had all of these really bad habits built up around my stuttering. I remember like sitting in my cubicle at work and like the phone would ring and I would pick it up and I just couldn't say anything, and I would just be so uh locked up. All of my old tricks that never really worked anyway really weren't working, and I you, sometimes um it's so hard to change, and I think that uh that is true for anyone, regardless of whether they stutter or not. But the the one positive that I had going for me, as certainly as it related to my stuttering at that point in my life, was that there, what I, the way I was handling my stuttering, the way I was living my life was so bad, and I was so depressed and so sad about everything that there was only one way to go, and that was up, and so I decided that I needed to get stuttering therapy again, even though I'd kind of had a mixed relationship with therapy in the past. it was, I needed to do something. So I actually called up my old uh therapist. Where I probably didn't call. I probably had my mom call or something, um, and and started to get, or actually it was probably email. I guess I was 24 at the time. Probably wasn't having my mom make phone calls for me, but maybe I was. I don't know. Who knows? It was a dark time. Um, and and started to work with her again. And what was really cool about that experience is that she had evolved a lot since we had worked together previously. So, um, before, when the therapy was all sort of centered around, fluency and really just trying to manage the overt stuttering, she had learned a lot more about stuttering, and and so we talked about um, a lot more of the emotional baggage that I had, and like why some of my secondary behaviors that I you know that I have, and frankly still have with stuttering, why I might have those, and things like that. And then the last thing is that I was responding really well to this shift in approach, and I was getting really excited about it, so much so that I thought maybe I wanted to be a speech therapist, because I just felt like, you know my life changing from being kind of as bad as I could imagine it to not as bad, was really exciting. She was also familiar somehow with this intensive program in New York, called the American, or at the American Institute for Stuttering. And at that point in my life, it was just like the most perfect thing ever, because it seemed so exciting to go to New York for 3 weeks, and to really work on this thing that I'd been seeing some positive changes in my life with. And that's when I met, oh, sorry. That's when I met Shamini, actually, when I was originally out there for my consultation. And the one thing, well, I remember a lot of stuff from that consultation, but the one thing that I still remember and talk about all the time, because it was like one of a big moment in my stuttering journey, that is just such a good example, because I really, and I, it's hard to maintain a natural, comfortable amount of eye contact when you're stuttering. It just is, because, stuttering's hard. And I really had a tough time with eye contact at that point in my life, but I was starting to work on it. And Shamini gave me this example, because what I was doing is, anytime I was getting in big blocks, I was averting mm, my eyes. And I'd love to say I never do this anymore, even though it's been, I guess that was like 15 years ago. But you know, uh, it's a journey. But Shamini gave me this example. She's like, well, as a listener, what would you prefer? Would you prefer if I introduce myself as, hi, my name is Joel, or would you prefer it as, hi, my name is Joel? And it was so brilliant, Shamini, because you did it as like kind of like the same duration and the same amount of struggle associated with the block that I was having. And it was just like a light bulb moment for me, because I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that I actually prefer the eye contact one. So ever since that today, and this is a good reminder for me, because it's still, it's a challenge, it's hard. I've always tried to maintain what I would consider to be like a natural amount of eye contact when I'm speaking, regardless of if I'm stuttering or not. Um, and and then so I went back a few months later. I did the program. It was like a at that time it was like a big sort of overarching program that introduced lots of different strategies. We did all sorts of really valuable for me desensitiz desensit desensitization work. Like we did surveys out in the park where we were just like not trying to use any fluency strategies and just like stuttering in front of people a lot. And that was just massive for me because I always had that sort of huge amount of fear and worry with the blocks that I would get into. And just to see that I after like these huge struggled lengthy blocks that I have, that I'd be like, oh wow, I'm okay. And I got my point across and I was able to communicate even though I was stuttering so much and with so much severity that everything is still actually okay. That stuff was huge. Um, and then, uh, learning more stuttering management strategies. Um, I think at that point in my life, I still wasn't quite. I probably would have been good if I just did more desensitization work because I still, as much as I wanted to say that I was okay with stuttering and that I accepted it. I think deep down I didn't. I think I still hated it. And so I was very much into the anything that would make me uh appear to be more fluent. Um so that was really the start for me of like getting on the right track, I think. And and really seeing my stuttering in a new way and not changing the metric of success. I remember we talked about where the metric of success isn't how much you stutter, it's are you communicating what you want to? Are you comfortable with that? Is it fun? Um, and all of that stuff was just new to me and it felt so amazing like I think that was the main thing for me is like to take this thing that I've just absolutely just hated all my life, this like core thing about myself, and just like flip it on its head to something that um I felt okay about. And like it wasn't something that was wrong with me. It was just something that was a part of me. And um the uh director of AIS, Catherine Montgomery, she would always say, to make it a spoke on the wheel instead of like the hub of the wheel. And that was always just like a big thing for me because it's like, yeah, it's never going to not be a part of you, but it doesn't have to be what it was for me, which was like the thing I thought about like every minute of every day. At least it felt like that. Um, and so since then, that was 2008. It's been, not a straight line. And it's still, um, it still just has really a lot of ups and downs for me. Um, but I, and I kind of can't believe this, that I'm saying this. And if you would have told me this in 2008, but like most days, I would say I don't even think about stuttering at all. Like and I can't believe I'm saying that. Yeah. And I stutter a lot, as you can see, and it's very, uh, contextual, which was another thing I think I really, really struggled with is it's like, well, I, why is it so much less of a problem if I'm in a certain situation or if I'm by myself? But I remember like, and then it would be like such a problem if I was like talking to an authority figure or like in some kind of stressful situation. And and what really helped me there was all these like analogies, that we talked about where you could have one of them I really liked was uh you could have a car on the road and it runs perfectly at 30 miles per hour in that context. And you can't, but it might have something wrong with the engine or something wrong with the car in some way where it just can't run very smooth at 70 miles per hour. And like everyone gets that. Everyone understands and accepts that. That that is something that could happen. And yeah, just because it can run perfectly fine at 5 miles an hour, 10 miles an hour, like pretty well at 30 miles an hour, um, that that doesn't mean that it's just gonna run great at 70 miles per hour. That was one that really was like, oh, okay, I'm starting to get it now. Um, and um, and I also just yeah went on sort of a crazy journey professionally because I ended up getting my master's degree in speech language pathology, and I worked as a speech therapist for a very short amount of time. And I think that I didn't realize at the time how much of an introvert I am. So, and I love people and I love to uh, to hang out with people and do everything like that, but it just really exhausts me. So whenever I would work at that time in my life when I graduated, it was 2013, and I had also went started working for a guitar effects pedal company locally and was just getting like obsessed with that. I think that because my original career was electrical engineering. I think that um, because I was having so much trouble communicating at the time, um, when I got out of college, I just assumed I didn't want to be an engineer. But I think it was actually just because I was stuttering had become such a barrier for communication for me that I just assumed that it was related to that. But anyway, I was working one day a week, mostly with people who stutter, and I loved it. But I would go home on the days where I worked as a speech therapist and just be so exhausted and so it just didn't feel sustainable. Meanwhile, I had ideas to start my own guitar pedal company with my own ideas and my own designs, and I was working on that in like whenever I could, basically. And I was just like the happiest I've ever been professionally working on anything. And uh, one of the big I talked about my brother passing away earlier, and he was pursuing an acting career in LA when he died. And his one of the things he talked about a lot was this whole concept of following your bliss. And he was really into this guy. He's a philosopher named Joseph Campbell, who's associated with that phrase. And and I just really kind of got into that thinking and started my company. And my brother's name was Chase, so I named my company Chase Bliss, and just really went for it. And I kind of can't believe it, but it's just really worked out. And now I have, like I said earlier, 20 employees, which is just just kind of, especially now when I really think about, those earlier times in my life, how if someone told me that you know, this is what I would be doing now, I just literally wouldn't believe it. Um, and and yeah, I guess my job has kind of changed a bit less, it's like, it's a lot less engineering now and more just like running a company with, you know, a lot, or not that many people, but 20 people is a lot of people to manage, and a lot of, there's all sorts of things to be stressed out about and worried about. And just I'm just stuttering isn't really part of it. I worry about a lot of stuff and I'm anxious about a lot of stuff, but um stuttering really isn't part of it anymore. I will say though, there is like weird things though, as I'm thinking about this now, like coaching my son's basketball team. I'll always, all right, another thing that I use, yeah, now I just real quickly, because I don't want to talk forever. I'll talk about kind of the ways that I manage stuttering now. But there is that part of me that's like, oh, like, are my kids' friends gonna like make fun of him because their dad stutters, and am I gonna like, I'll like get in a block when I'm coaching, and like kids will finish my sentences and I want to just tell them to stop. And I kind of do, but like also they're kids and I don't want to be like weird about it. So just like things like that, I get kind of hung up on. And oh, like introducing myself to neighbors. That's that's probably like the toughest one, because it's like when you're meeting someone new for the first time, and a huge part of my management strategy, these days is just telling people I stutter and talking about it. But it's such a like a deep and sensitive topic that it's not necessarily like the first conversation I want to have with a new person, and maybe not someone I'm going to like see all the time. So like, yeah, the neighbors thing kind of trips me up, because it's like sooner or later I need to say I stutter, and I usually just try to do it as early as possible. But I don't know. I think I can be kind of awkward about it, but that's okay. Um so yeah, I would say my main strategies are pretty radical advertising. I'll like, for example, even like with you know coaching my kids' basketball team, at the first practice, the first time I'm kind of addressing the team, I'll tell them that I stutter and it's just how I talk. And sometimes I might get in a block, and I'll do a little education. Like I know what I want to say, and I just ask that you let me say it and try not to finish my sentence. But I know you're just trying to help if you are. Um, I also, but again, like I said, like a lot of the time, I'm just not managing it because I'm not thinking about it. So I will stutter a lot and get into a lot of blocks, and sometimes do some old behaviors and habits that I'm not proud of, like looking away, or I really try not to like change words and stuff like that. But I think if I would be lying if I said I'd never do that. I really try not to. Um, I I do uh voluntary stuttering. And I did a bit of that earlier on in this conversation. But also, like, I was stuttering more earlier on in this, and part of that was voluntary stuttering, but a lot of it was real stuttering, because I was just a little, it took me a while to kind of get comfortable with this situation and this context, and that happens to me a lot as well. So really being open about stuttering, talking about it, um, understanding that, in the times where I am really struggling, like this just happened to me a few days ago. I was going over to a neighbor's house to pick up my son because he was playing with his friend, and there was a little party or a gathering over there, and I I usually in situations like that, I like to go in with kind of a plan, and I didn't have a plan and was caught off guard and was just found myself really like the train was off the tracks and I was really struggling, stuttering with a lot of struggle. And I never really got the train back on the tracks. And but just walking away from it and being like, hey, that happens sometimes and that's okay. And that's part of my strategy too, is just not getting too hung up on anything. Um, and maybe if that happens again, maybe I'll try to go in with the plan, but maybe I won't and I'll just stutter a lot again. And that's okay too. Um, so yeah, just giving myself a lot of uh grace and just being okay with stuttering and all different types of stuttering, hard stuttering, easy stuttering, um, and reminding myself that I prefer to stutter easier in a more in in a way that makes communicating more enjoyable and fluid for me, but it's also okay if it doesn't go as planned. Um, yeah, I think that's about where I'm at.
Fabulous. Wonderful, Joel. Yes, I loved your everything. It's nice to get just a catch up on your life because we haven't had contact. I mean, really, I did your consultation in 2008, but then my then mentor, Catherine Montgomery, who has since passed away, uh, really ran the majority of your intensive program. Maybe I was there running Wednesdays or something like that, but
Hmm.
if that. So yeah, you had your contact there, and um, did you? I just have a random follow up question, then we can open it up to Q and A. Um, were you? I feel like I saw you more from a distance of being involved in like self help communities, maybe a bit more the community, the stuttering community. I don't know if you did any more like official speech therapy after you did your 3 week intensive program, which again, that doesn't even exist at that place anymore. And now I'm in my own practice, so it's a different setup now than all those years ago. But I'm wondering about that, or was it more the stuttering community? And I know for a while you were host on Stutter Talk too, right, on the podcast. I listened to some of your things years back, so yeah,
Yeah,
maybe yeah.
I kind of glossed over. Yeah, I should have talked more about that, but meeting other people who stutter was massive for me. And that there was a few years there where that was kind of my thing. I would just go to different conferences and like meet up with, with my new friends in the stuttering community and then yeah, the Stutter Talk podcast. And then I mean I still like I miss my friends and we still kind of keep in touch a little bit, not as much as I would like. But I think what happened to me is I just the rest of my life started to get super busy with, my business and then having 3 kids is just totally wild. And so I just but also I think that on a personal level, I didn't um need it as much or something.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but
Yes.
I don't know. I what's cool though is it's like I feel like the stuttering community and all of those friendships that I have whenever we do get together, or even if it's not in person over a Zoom or a phone call, like if we're just able to pick up right where we left off, and like those are like
Mm,
the best friendships, I think. It's like everyone kind of is doing their thing and we're just able to reconnect and it feels like just like the old days.
love that. I love that you're talking to this point. I had a very different, which I won't get into, journey that was a health related journey, but I was very involved with a community through a process that really helped me to come back to life and regain everything. And there was a point where I separated out of it because I was back in life again. And I was exactly what you said. And they're wonderful, and the friends I made, the same exact thing that you're saying. And I think that it's beautiful to hear that that's okay, and it might be part of your journey, and that's a
Yep.
wonderful part to accept into. You're like, I'm doing life.
And I still think I could see myself like maybe when my kids get older and I'm not, maybe I would get really, really back into it, who knows?
Yeah. Yes. Yes. And even it's very interesting. I wonder how many different areas kind of followed that pattern. Um, I know some people too, even in that community I was in, went into it career wise because it was so inspiring to them. And it wasn't for me because this is my passion, right?
Yep.
And I love how you stayed true to yourself and came, kind of circled back into creating this company and honoring your brother and being inspired by him. I loved hearing that part of your journey too. Thanks for sharing such, personal insight. I know when I met you, it was very fresh and raw, and just to not have a whole lot of contact with you, but then to see what blossomed from that to here is really beautiful.
Thank
So,
you. And I feel that way with you
yeah.
too. It's like, yeah, we haven't talked forever, but it's like, yeah, we're just picking up where we left off. So that's really cool too.
Yeah. This is awesome. All right, I want to open it up to anybody who is here still. I'm sure there's going to be people watching this in the future that are going to have questions for you and would love to connect, but maybe I'll open the comments up and maybe we can monitor that a little bit, and maybe you possibly could answer some of that on YouTube where I'll
For
post
sure.
it.
Yeah.
But
I'm online a lot.
yeah, okay, so awesome. So I'm not positive. If you really do not want to be on camera at all, I'm pretty sure that it'll just be your voice that comes through, whoever asks questions now. But if you're very sensitive about not wanting to be on camera, then you can wait till I stop the recording. But if anybody would like to ask some questions now, I have I have a bunch for you that could go on and on. I will wait to the very end for any of mine. So I saw some coming back on camera. Do any of you guys have questions up there? Come off mute if you do. And if you have any that you want to ask off, okay?
Yeah. Hi. I'm a dad of one of Chamonix's little clients. So my boy is 10, and um, he's in fifth grade now, so heading into middle school next year. I know you said that was a little bit of a challenging time and all. Kind of I unfortunately, we all know kids and everything else. So, could you kind of expand on that a little bit? Like, what kind of difficulties, like, you ran into a little bit, and what ultimately kind of gave you some help slash comfort, or helped calm things down? I know that's when you said, the initial speech therapist helped quite a bit, but yeah, just to kind of chat about that. I guess that's kind of the thing that jumped right out at me a little bit, because that's right now most applicable to him. So, if you wouldn't mind.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think I can give just some insight, and some practical advice, but I think for the most part, and it's probably not what you want to hear exactly, but I think it's good, is that um I feel like, at least for me, and I can only speak for myself, but like that is just such a challenging time for anybody. Um, and everybody has stuff, that they're insecure about. And it's so, that age, you're so hyper focused on that stuff. And stuttering is just such a tough one, And I, dang it, I'm gonna start crying. Um, there's something about that time that it's just, there's no way around it. It's there's going to be some tough times no matter what, and that's true, I think, of whether you stutter or not, but especially if you stutter. And I can tell you're good. You're an awesome dad, and you're going to be an awesome dad. Just the fact that you're here, um, and just to be there for them, and understand that there's just going to be certain things that happen that you there that is just that's just going to happen, and you just got to be there for them. Um, on a practical level, but again, it's like, and I think this is why I really struggled to be a speech therapist, is like, when I was doing that 10 years ago, and I'm like, 29, I just feel like, and then this is me personally, but it's so much easier to be a 29-year-old who stutters than a middle school kid. And so you can't, like, I would just really have a tough time sitting there being like, well, you shouldn't care what other people think. It's like when you're in middle school, that's what you do. You care about what other people think. That's just how your brain works. So like for me to sit there and like tell a kid not to care is just so out of touch, you know? So but that said, it's like I would, yeah, I mean, middle school kids shouldn't care so much what other people think, but they do. Um, and so I don't know, as much as you can like instill confidence in all the amazing things that are true about, your kid, and understand that yeah, it's going to be hard, but you're going to be a great dad, and they're going to be a great kid, and you're going to get through it. And honestly, if it's anything like how it is for them, like it was for me, it is gonna really um make them a stronger person. And I truly believe, I was telling this to Shamini before other people got on the call, like stuttering without a doubt has been a net positive on my life. Like I am such a better person, such a more empathetic person, and I've been through so many tough things in my life that it if I didn't stutter, I without a doubt would I I just wouldn't be the same. I think like so many of the stuff I actually like about myself are related to stuttering. So there's going to be a lot of hard times, but it's going to be good, and it's going to be really good.
Very cool. Thank you very much.
Great, Joel. That was wonderful. Yeah, I think a lot of beauty is forged in the fire. So, and I love your honesty. I love your honesty about sometimes the best thing a parent can do is be a soft place to land, a place where stuttering is totally okay and they can come home and cry or express it. And it's okay to do that because a lot of times it's about feeling those feelings and getting through that to build the resiliency. And you've got people who are for you. You've got your tribe at home. Having
Yeah.
that is so helpful. And which is why it's hard when at home there's a lot of emphasis on tools and not stuttering.
Yeah. This is a good reminder for me as a dad too, because I'm thinking about things with my kids that's not stuttering, that I'm just
Uh-oh.
like, maybe I could be a little bit more of a soft landing spot.
Okay,
So
that's
yeah.
just my thought, but yeah.
No, I agree. You're totally right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, great though. That was great from Milos. Let's see if anybody else. All right, I'm gonna shoot a couple questions your way, unless anybody else wants to
Is
come on. Oh, yes.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Joel. Is so I might also have something to add. So my name is Carly, and I am 21 years old. Um, and my story is that this comes from a birth defect, back when my mom was going through pregnancy. Um, is so all through elementary school, I didn't really notice it. Um, preferably until middle school, and then I had started getting teased, by maybe two or three other people. Um, uh, it, and then during high school, sometimes it would come and go. But like it probably wasn't really that big for me during high school because I started to make more friends than I had in middle school. Um, but then during college, there would be some times where I would have to give a presentation and I would kind of stumble upon my words, which is probably also what you were saying. Because I remember there's this one time I had to give a presentation during class about my family. Is And it was kind of ironic because I'm also studying communications. Um is so during when I was giving this presentation, is it would probably take me about maybe like probably over 30 minutes to get through like 5 or 6 slides. And I just felt really horrible towards the end. But now after I had graduated with my associates, and I had started taking speech therapy, it kind of has made me feel a little bit better. Because like I don't remember taking speech therapy in the past. I know I might have taken like physical therapy a few times during middle or elementary school to deal with the speech effect and to deal with the speech effect and the disability that also followed from that process. Yeah. So thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you for sharing all that as well. I mean, it
Yeah.
sounds like, I mean, there's so many, it's like everyone's experience, I feel like, is unique and individual, but yet so much of the stuff that you're talking about is I relate to so much. And I
Mm,
feel like
me too.
all of our journeys have a thread that where there's a shared understanding. And what I loved hearing about what you just shared is that it seems like you are able to draw strength from times that were challenging. And yeah, there is something about like just knowing the struggles that you've been through, and knowing that whatever comes up for you, you're going to be able to get through it, because that's how it's
Yeah.
always been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that is also my life story too. So now I kind of feel like that I can own up to it. Is uh is is and I could also feel better about what had happened during all those probably 10, 12 years in the past.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Right on.
Thank you.
All right. Lovely sharing. We've got another question
Yeah,
coming up. Oh,
um, I just have a quick one. So like you said that like you like just don't really like think about your stuttering anymore. It's like I was just like wondering like around like when that happened for you, like so I have something to look forward to or something. I'm just kidding, but
No, I
um
know what you mean.
just curious.
So I think it is a little bit, I have to be honest, a little bit of the thing I'm thinking of is like a cheat code, but that like, so because I'm the boss of my company, a big what I've realized through my journey is where I've had a lot of trouble is when I'm like talking to like a boss or like an authority figure or a teacher or something like that, is the context that I really struggle in. But I don't really ever have to do that anymore because like, you know, all my employees, I stutter all the time. Like I'm stuttering constantly, and they just like, what are they gonna say? like they can't do anything about it. So I'm laughing. I feel bad because I'm not giving any practical advice, but I think that if I didn't own my own company and if I had a normal job and I've had a lot of mean bosses in my life, I think that I would still really struggle and think about it a lot. So I don't know. I wish I could tell you something practical and useful. Another reason
No, that
why I
was
struggled as
all
a
good.
therapist. I think though, obviously, getting older helps because I think naturally, most people as you get older, you just start to, I don't know, you do care less about what other people think. And I think that helps. But, um, so yes, I do genuinely think that there are elements that just kind of happen naturally.
Right. Gotcha. Thank you.
Hmm.
All right. Okay. I don't think we have any other questions. If you do, somebody can either chat me or let me know. I'm going to ask you one or two. I have a lot more, but maybe we can talk another time and just chat off camera. Would be fun. So let me just go on here. Okay. Yes. Okay. So maybe I'll just randomly pick one or two. Uh, we started to talk about this before, and I want to actually talk to, I want to do a video about this and maybe talk to some others. But along the way, I've worked with a bunch of people who have kids. Sometimes their kids stutter, sometimes their kids don't stutter, but it seems like a topic I've worked with a bunch of people on how to mention their stuttering to their kids. I don't think we've actually talked about that yet. Is everything okay where you are? I see you moving around.
My neighbor started mowing his lawn, so I just thought I'd
Oh,
change
okay.
rooms.
I
No,
didn't
nope,
even
everything's
hear
good.
that.
Okay, so you're asking about if hold on one second.
I'm wondering if you've talked to your children about your stuttering and how that conversation went. I've had the spectrum of parents who've very easily and openly already talked about it before I even am working with them, and others that were literally doing the therapy sessions to role play and discuss and find ways, even using this book, I Talk Like a River. I don't know if you know this one, but a book that has to do with stuttering, to bring the topic up, to talk about how they speak like this too. And this is part of what they call stuttering. But it can be a very sensitive topic for parents, depending on where they're at in their journey, to discuss with their children, like reading books at bedtime and having children fill the word in. And that can be a trigger or not, depending on your own beliefs about your stuttering, how open, it's where you're at with your journey, then impacting how you discuss this with your kids, whether your kids stutter or not. Of course, that would be different. But I just think this is such an interesting topic. And yeah, so has it been a topic with your children?
Yeah, I mean, probably to an annoying degree. They're probably really tired of hearing me talk about it because, like, I'll bring it up all the time if they're going through, some sort of challenge or something, and I'll be like, "Well, this is kind of like a time when I stuttered," and they'll just kind of probably roll their eyes at this point. Um, but with my 8-year-old, especially, because I kind of think he's kind of like an old soul. I don't like my 6-year-old, I just don't even know if it really the only thing is when I went to his classroom one time to read a book because there was like a thing where like the parents read a book, and I went in and like did my self advertising, like, hey, because I always just think like, how cool if like one of the kids stutters or has an aunt and uncle who stutters or something, and just be like, hey, I talk a little bit, differently and get stuck on my words sometimes. And Griffin did say that one of his friends sort of made fun of me, after I left. And so that kind of hurt. But then it was a cool opportunity, to bring up like, well, geez, like that, how did you feel about that when, he made fun of me? And, it was kind of like a cool opportunity for a conversation. So I don't know. I feel like, again, like I said, like stuttering is a net positive in my life. Like I really lean into it because I think it gives me such a good perspective on a lot of stuff. And I remember pretty vividly a lot of the experiences that I had when I was, 8 years old. Like I just remember it. So I love talking about it with my kids, but I can understand why people wouldn't too. Now you're muted.
You're right. It's so much an opportunity to address what's triggering you when it is something that's so hard to bring up to your children. Um, yeah, yeah, and it's been, yeah, I would like to address it more and even have parents speak to it because it does come up a lot in therapy sessions with me, and I find it a really, interesting, fun kind of um, unique little situation, and it would be great for parents because I feel like I'm walking parents through it, but it'd be great for parents to hear from other parents and the wording that they've used and what they've done and how it's gone over with their own children. So, I mean, most kids are just like, yeah, okay. Yeah, I know. You talk like
Yeah.
that. Like,
Most of them don't. Honestly, if there's a theme throughout my life, because I remember actually even going in 2008, that when I really wasn't very open about stuttering, and it's like, it's like all my friends, it's like, well, I stutter and I'm going to do this thing in New York. It's like, that's awesome, cool. Like, yeah, we we clearly know you stutter. We love you, and um
mm,
uh I think it's been a running theme throughout my life where I've just always felt like people care so much about it and they kind of just don't, you know. Uh,
mm-hmm.
People care about themselves and they care about their own issues and insecurities, and if they're friends with you, it's because they like you, and it's nothing nothing to do with whether you stutter or not.
Mm-hmm. What's your fondest stuttering memory?
Um, Gosh, there's actually so many. Um,
It's hard to pick. I love
yeah.
it. It's
I have
good.
this one though. Okay, so one of my favorite bands in the world, and so I do my company's guitar effects pedals. One of my favorite bands in the world is this band called Radiohead,
Mm.
and there was some like a lot of the videos that I had about my products. I'm the one that's explaining it, and I'm stuttering, and like it's like it's my whole thing. Like I'm very open about it. And their guitar player, Ed O'Brien, sent me an email and said he wanted one of my pedals, which was, a whole thing. That was it. But then wrote like a
Mm.
paragraph about how cool he thought the whole stuttering thing was. And I feel like I just felt like this warmth. Like, it was like one
Mm.
of my heroes, and like and then again, like this thing that I for such a long period of my life just deeply hated, and to have that to be something that someone that I think so highly of like noticed about me and was impressed with, just really brings it full circle, you know. I have to give a little disclaimer because I'm noticing my computer is about to turn off, and I don't know where my battery is, so it might just shut off at any moment. Just didn't want to
Okay.
ruin, you know.
I think this is a great place to end, though.
Okay,
You've
I'm
shared
sorry.
so much wonderful information, and we'll connect again and we can have some other talk. But thank you for this, for sharing everything you have.